Cheating wife walked away from $10 million, unaware of fortune, faced ruthless revenge. I should have known better. The signs were all there, the late-night work meetings, her sudden obsession with fitness, the distance growing between us. But I loved her too much, blinded by my own trust. The idea that Emma, my wife of 7 years, could betray me like this never crossed my mind. She was everything to me, and I thought we were building the life we always dreamed of together. My name is Jake Henderson, 35 years old, a software engineer turned entrepreneur. After years of grinding away at a corporate job, I finally struck gold with a business idea, and now I was on the brink of selling my startup for $10 million. Life should have been perfect, big house, fancy cars, and a future filled with dreams. But all that was about to come crashing down because of her. Emma, 32, a marketing manager at a mid-sized firm, was a master of appearances. To everyone else, she was the loving wife, the supportive partner who always stood by my side. I mean, she made our life look like a fairy tale on social media, endless posts of romantic dinners, vacations to Europe, smiling pictures of us pretending to be the perfect couple. But behind that smile was a woman living a double life. The day I found out about her affair, everything changed. It was a Friday evening. I came home early, thinking I'd surprise her. We were supposed to celebrate the progress I made with the business, our future was about to skyrocket. I had it all planned, her favorite wine, dinner at that fancy restaurant downtown, and later, I'd tell her about the sale of the company, how we'd be multimillionaires by the end of the week. But instead of her warm smile greeting me at the door, I found the house quiet, too quiet. The only sound came from the upstairs bedroom. I crept up the stairs, and the noises I heard confirmed my worst fear, her giggling, mixed with the unmistakable sound of another man's voice. My heart pounded. Every step felt like I was walking into a nightmare. When I opened the door, there they were, Emma, naked, in bed with him. His name was Mark, 28 years old, a co-worker of hers from the marketing department. He was some pretty boy fitness freak, always hanging around her office, according to her friends. The same guy she swore was just a work friend. I froze for a moment, unable to breathe. It was as if the air had been sucked out of the room. Emma gasped and scrambled to cover herself, her face drained of color. Mark, the idiot, just stared at me, wide-eyed, like a deer caught in headlights. He didn't even bother covering up, as if he thought he could brazen his way out of it. "What the hell is this, Emma?" I asked, my voice cold, shaking with rage. She started stammering, "Jake, I can explain. It's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like?" I cut her off, my voice rising. "You're naked in bed with him, Emma. How could you do this?" She didn't have an answer. Tears welled up in her eyes, but it didn't matter. Her tears didn't change the fact that she had torn our life apart. I didn't stick around to hear her excuses. I turned and walked out of the room, numb with shock, my heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. As I made my way downstairs, my mind raced. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to my face while she was screwing him behind my back? Everything we built together, the trust, the love, the life, meant nothing to her. I grabbed my phone and called my lawyer immediately. I wasn't going to let this go without a fight. She was about to learn the hard way that betrayal comes with consequences. As I sat in my car outside, I stared up at the house, seething with anger. The house we built together, the dreams we shared, it was all a lie. The future I thought we were building wasn't ours, it was mine. She had chosen to throw it all away for a fling with some younger guy. But she had no idea about the $10 million deal I was about to close. That money was my ace in the hole, my secret weapon. And then, it hit me. She didn't know about the deal. Emma had no idea I was about to become rich beyond our wildest dreams. I sat there, a slow grin spreading across my face. She thought she could walk away from me, from everything we built, but she had no idea she was walking away from the fortune of a lifetime. As I clenched the steering wheel, I knew exactly what I had to do. This wasn't just about her cheating anymore. No, this was about teaching her a lesson, one she'd never forget. I didn't know it then, but this was just the beginning of a game I was about to win. Emma had made her move, and now it was my turn. But little did she know, the stakes were about to get a lot higher. And by the time I was done, she'd regret ever betraying me. Mark wasn't just some random fling, he was going to be the key to something much bigger, something that would change everything. But that's for later. Right now, all I could think about was how I would use this betrayal to my advantage. She had no idea what was coming next. The weekend after I caught Emma in bed with Mark, everything felt like a blur. My heart ached with betrayal, but my mind was already working on overdrive. The anger had turned into something else, a cold, calculated focus on what needed to happen next. If Emma thought she could cheat on me and walk away unscathed, she was sorely mistaken. But first, I had to play it cool, as if nothing had changed. I stayed in a hotel for a few days to avoid her. I knew she'd try to contact me, beg for forgiveness, maybe even try to twist the situation. Sure enough, my phone buzzed non-stop, texts, missed calls, voicemails filled with her apologies and pathetic excuses. "Jake, please come home so we can talk. I made a mistake, it didn't mean anything, I swear. I love you, Jake, please don't do this." The more she begged, the angrier I became. But I knew responding now would only tip my hand. She had no clue what I had in store for her, and I wasn't about to give her any hint. I needed time to put my plan into motion. By Monday, I had cooled down enough to return home. I wanted to see what cards Emma would play now. When I walked through the front door, she was sitting on the couch, her face pale and swollen from crying. The second she saw me, she jumped up, rushing toward me like a guilty child caught in the act. "Jake, please, we need to talk. I've been losing my mind not knowing what you're thinking." Her voice cracked, and for a second, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But I wasn't here to comfort her. I wasn't the same man she had cheated on a few days ago. "Talk? What's left to talk about, Emma? I caught you in bed with another man. What part of that needs explaining?" I kept my voice steady, hiding the rage simmering beneath. "I swear it was a mistake," she cried, her eyes red and desperate. "Mark, he means nothing to me. It was just, I don't even know why it happened. I wasn't thinking." "Not thinking? That's your excuse?" I stared at her, incredulous. "You threw away our marriage because you weren't thinking? You're a liar, Emma, and I don't trust a word that comes out of your mouth." Her lip quivered. "I'll do anything, Jake. I'll quit my job, cut off all contact with Mark, just give me a chance to make it right. Please." And here it was, the part where she tried to fix everything as if a simple apology could erase what she had done. I was ready for this moment, but I needed to make her think she had some control. The key to my revenge was letting her feel like she still had a grip on the situation. "All right," I said slowly, watching her face light up with hope. "We can talk about fixing this, but there's going to be one condition. Anything, whatever it takes, I'll do it." She practically lunged forward, grabbing my arm. I pulled away, keeping my composure. "I need to understand why this happened. You say it was a mistake, but that doesn't make sense to me. What is it about Mark that made you betray me? Was it just physical, or was there something more?" Her face fell at my question, and for a moment, she seemed caught off guard. "No, it wasn't about him. It wasn't about feelings. It was, I don't know, Jake. Maybe it was the attention. He made me feel wanted, and I." Her voice trailed off, and I could see her struggling to justify it. This was the crack in her armor I was waiting for. "Made you feel wanted?" I repeated, narrowing my eyes. "So I wasn't enough for you? Is that what you're saying?" "No, it's not like that," she cried, panic rising in her voice. "You've always been good to me, Jake, but you've been so busy with your company these past few months. You were always working late, and I guess I felt lonely." Lonely, that was her excuse. She cheated on me because she felt lonely. My blood boiled, but outwardly, I stayed calm. "So you found someone to fill the gap," I said coldly. "Someone like Mark. What does he have that I don't?" "It wasn't about him," she insisted, but I wasn't buying it. The way she avoided eye contact told me everything I needed to know. "I find that hard to believe," I replied, stepping closer. "I think there's more to this story, Emma. A lot more, and I'm going to find out exactly what that is." She went pale, her breath catching in her throat. What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not just going to take your word for it," I said, my tone sharp. "I'm going to do some digging, talk to a few people. I know Mark's not the first guy, is he?" She froze. For a moment, the silence was so thick I could hear the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. Emma's lips parted, but no words came out. It was the hesitation I was looking for, the crack in her story that confirmed my suspicions. "You thought I wouldn't find out?" I pressed, taking another step forward. "How long has this been going on, Emma? Months? Years?" Her eyes filled with tears again, and she shook her head furiously. "Jake, I swear, there's no one else. It was just Mark, and it was a mistake. Please, you have to believe me." But I didn't believe her. Not for a second. And now, it was time to push her into a corner. "You're lying to me again," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "But that's all right. I've already taken precautions." Her eyes widened in panic. "Precautions? What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, waving it in front of her. "You see, I hired a private investigator. I didn't just find out about you and Mark by accident. I've been watching you for weeks, Emma. And what he found? Well, let's just say, Mark wasn't the only one. Her face went white as a sheet. What? No, that's not possible. Oh, but it is. I smirked, watching the horror spread across her face. You didn't think I'd figure out your little trips to that hotel by the airport, or the fact that you've been seeing Mark for months while playing the perfect wife at home? She stood there trembling, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, no words able to form. She didn't know whether to deny it or try to confess, but her silence was all the confirmation I needed. And here's the twist, I said, leaning in close so she could feel every word. Mark isn't just some fling, is he, Emma? He's your ticket out. You've been planning to leave me for him for weeks. You think I don't know about that apartment you two were going to rent? You were going to take half of everything I own and run off with him, weren't you? Her legs buckled, and she collapsed onto the couch, covering her face with her hands. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she sobbed. I wasn't thinking straight. Well, it's too late for that now, I said, my voice icy. You've made your bed, Emma, and now, you're going to lie in it. She was shaking uncontrollably now, her sobs filling the room. But I felt no sympathy. This was exactly where I wanted her, broken, exposed, and cornered. She had no idea what was coming next, and that was exactly the way I wanted it. Mark thought he could swoop in and steal my wife. Emma thought she could walk away with half of my company and run off into the sunset with him. But they were both about to find out just how wrong they were. The game had changed. And now, it was my turn to play. With Emma crumpled on the couch, tears streaming down her face, I felt a strange sense of clarity wash over me. My heart still ached, but the anger was transforming into a calculated resolve. I knew I couldn't allow her or Mark to get away with their betrayal unscathed. As Emma wallowed in her misery, I started crafting my plan, a plan so outrageous, it would turn their lives upside down. The first thing I needed was leverage. I had already hired a private investigator to gather intel, but I needed more than just evidence of her infidelity. I wanted to ruin both of them, and for that, I had to be smart and strategic. I was in a game of chess, and it was time to start moving my pieces. I pulled out my laptop and began researching. I wanted to find out everything about Mark, his job, his finances, his family, anything that could give me a weapon to use against him. As I typed away, I imagined the look on Emma's face when she realized what I was planning. In my heart, I felt no remorse. She had chosen this path, and now she would have to pay the price. After several hours of digging, I found something promising. Mark was involved in a real estate investment firm that had recently been under scrutiny for questionable practices. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon a series of public records revealing a pattern of shady deals, tax evasion, and some rather suspicious partnerships with local contractors. This was golden information, and I knew just how to use it. I decided to call in a favor from an old college buddy, Alex, who had become a journalist. He was known for his tenacity and willingness to dive deep into stories, especially those involving corruption. I pitched him the idea of investigating Mark's firm further, feeding him the intel I had collected. Mark, huh? Alex replied with a chuckle. Sounds like a prime candidate for a deep dive. I'll see what I can dig up. Perfect. While Alex worked on gathering evidence against Mark, I had other plans brewing for Emma. I knew I needed to make her feel the consequences of her actions. It was time to strip away the life she had taken for granted, the luxurious home, the expensive car, and the comfort of my financial stability. I needed a way to scare her, make her realize that the safety net she thought she could fall back on was about to disappear. I made a few phone calls and arranged to meet with my attorney. Jake, good to see you, Tom said as I walked into his office. He was a sharp guy, with a no-nonsense attitude that I appreciated. I explained the situation and how I wanted to proceed. Given the circumstances, we can file for divorce on grounds of infidelity, but it sounds like you want more than just a clean break, he said, leaning back in his chair. Exactly, I replied, a wicked smile creeping across my face. I want to ensure Emma knows there are consequences. I want her to feel every bit of the betrayal she inflicted on me. Tom nodded, understanding where I was coming from. We can make sure the divorce proceedings are public. If we play this right, it could lead to some unwanted attention for both her and Mark. But you have to be careful, you don't want to look like the bitter ex-husband. I assured him that I could keep my composure. The last thing I wanted was to appear weak in front of Emma. I wanted her to see the man I had become, the one who would no longer be a victim. As I left Tom's office, I felt a rush of exhilaration. I was no longer drowning in despair. I was taking back control of my life, and soon, I would make sure that Emma faced the music for what she had done. Over the next few days, I executed my plan. I avoided Emma as much as possible, letting her stew in her own guilt. I stopped answering her calls and ignored her messages. Each time she reached out, I felt a surge of satisfaction knowing that I was making her wait. I wanted her to feel the pain of uncertainty, the fear of what was to come. Meanwhile, Alex was busy gathering evidence against Mark. He called me one evening, his voice brimming with excitement. "Jake, you won't believe what I found. Mark's firm has some serious skeletons in the closet, and I think I can link him directly to some illegal activity. I'll have the article ready for publication by next week." "Perfect," I said, a wicked grin spreading across my face. "Let's make sure it goes live at the right moment." Next, I turned my attention to Emma. I set up a meeting under the guise of wanting to discuss our separation. I knew it was time to confront her again and let her know how deep her betrayal ran. On the day of our meeting, I chose a local cafe, knowing it would be public but still intimate enough for a private conversation. Emma arrived, her face pale and nervous. She glanced around, as if hoping someone would rescue her from what was about to happen. "Jake, I'm glad you wanted to talk," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's cut the crap, Emma." "You know why we're here," I replied, my tone sharp. "You've lost everything you thought you could rely on, and now it's time for the truth." Her eyes widened, fear creeping in as she realized I wasn't going to make this easy. "What do you mean? You really think you can just walk away from this without consequences? I've been documenting everything. I know about you and Mark, about the plans you had to leave me, but guess what? The tables are about to turn." I could see her breathing quicken, the panic setting in. "What are you talking about? You can't do this, Jake. You'll ruin everything." "I intend to," I said, leaning forward, my voice low and menacing. "I'm not the same guy you manipulated and walked all over. You'll see. I'm going to expose your lies, and when I'm done, Mark will be taking the fall for everything you two did together." "Please, Jake, don't do this." "You can't," she cried, desperation lacing her words. But I wasn't going to back down. "You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat. You made your choice, Emma, and now I'm making mine." I watched as realization dawned on her. She had underestimated me, and now she was paying the price. Her facade of control crumbled, leaving only the shell of the woman who had betrayed me. As I stood to leave, I couldn't help but smile at the chaos I was about to unleash. Emma had no idea how deep my revenge would go. I would dismantle her world piece by piece, and when she looked back at this moment, she would understand just how serious I was. The game had changed, and I was no longer playing to lose. I was playing to win. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. As I prepared for the fallout of my revenge, a thrill coursed through me. I could practically taste the sweet satisfaction of seeing Emma's world unravel before my eyes. I had spent the last few weeks meticulously orchestrating every detail, ensuring that my plan would hit hard and leave a mark she wouldn't soon forget. Alex had published the article about Mark's shady real estate dealings just as I'd hoped. It exploded online, drawing attention from local news outlets and social media influencers alike. People were hungry for drama, and this was a buffet. Mark's firm was facing scrutiny like never before, and the heat was on. But that was just the beginning. I knew Emma would be blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her and Mark. I watched as she posted happy photos on social media, pretending everything was perfect. But I also knew she would soon be checking her phone and finding the world around her collapsing. I waited for the right moment to confront her again. A few days after the article dropped, I received a tip from one of the investigative journalists who had reached out to me after hearing about my story. They wanted to do a feature on the scandal, linking Emma's name to Mark's firm. They were eager to dive into the juicy details and needed my insight as the betrayed husband. "Jake, this could be big. Are you ready to go on record?" the reporter asked, his voice crackling with excitement. "Absolutely. Let's give Emma a show she won't forget," I replied, barely able to contain my glee. That evening, I sent Emma a text, requesting to meet at the same cafe where we'd last spoken. This time, I was ready to pull back the curtain on her double life. When Emma walked into the cafe, her demeanor was noticeably different. She wore a tailored blouse and pencil skirt, an attempt to maintain her poise, but I could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. She settled into a chair across from me, crossing her arms defensively. "Jake, what now?" she asked, her voice edged with irritation. "You've made your point. Can't we just end this?" I leaned back, feigning casualness, as I savored the moment. "Oh, we're just getting started, Emma. I hope you've been keeping up with the news." Her expression morphed from annoyance to confusion. What do you mean? What news? I smirked, tapping my phone to pull up the article about Mark. This news. I slid the screen across the table. Her face blanched as she read the headline, Local Real Estate Firm Under Investigation, Ties to Infamous Cheater Revealed. As she processed the information, the blood drained from her face. What the hell? This is, she began, but I interrupted her. Don't act surprised, Emma. You thought you could just run off with Mark and leave me to pick up the pieces. Now, you're right in the middle of this mess. I watched as her confidence crumbled, her facade slipping away piece by piece. You can't do this to us, Jake. This isn't fair, she protested, her voice rising. Fair? You want to talk about fair? You walked away from a man who loved you for a cheap thrill. Now, it's time to face the consequences of your actions. She was clearly panicking now, scanning the cafe as if hoping someone would swoop in to save her. You're ruining everything. Do you have any idea what this could do to my life? Of course I do, I said, relishing in her discomfort. But remember, you made this bed. Now you get to lie in it. As Emma's eyes darted nervously, I felt a rush of power. I had transformed from the hurt husband into a man with a mission. I was no longer the victim, I was the architect of her downfall. Before she could respond, I shifted the conversation. By the way, have you met my friend Alex? He's been doing some digging into your little escapades with Mark. I think he'll be reaching out to you shortly. Wait, what? Jake, don't, she begged, desperation seeping into her voice. Too late, Emma. I've already spoken to him. You'll find out just how ruthless the truth can be, and trust me, it's going to be a lot worse than you think. With that, I stood up, feeling invincible. I left her there, shaking and panicking. As I walked out of the cafe, I could hear her sobs echoing behind me, but I didn't look back. I had planned for this moment, and I was savoring every second. As the days went by, the media frenzy escalated. Mark's firm was officially under investigation, and the local news had picked up the story, airing segments that included interviews with disgruntled employees and investors. My heart raced with exhilaration as I watched the fallout from the comfort of my living room. But I had one final card to play. Emma's friends had been quite vocal about their disdain for me throughout our marriage. I decided to invite them to a small gathering, knowing they would be eager to hear about the drama that had unfolded. I wanted to make sure they were aware of the truth behind Emma's betrayal. On the day of the gathering, I made sure everything was perfect. I arranged for some snacks, opened a few bottles of wine, and created an inviting atmosphere. When the doorbell rang, I felt a surge of anticipation. As Emma's friends began to filter in, I greeted them with a smile that concealed my true intentions. Hey, everyone. I thought it'd be fun to catch up and chat about what's been happening lately, I said, my tone casual. What do you mean? One of her friends asked, raising an eyebrow. Oh, you know, just the usual drama surrounding Emma and her new business partner, I replied, letting the implications linger. The room fell silent as they caught my meaning, and I could see the wheels turning in their heads. I had them right where I wanted them. Before long, I had them all in stitches as I recounted Emma's outrageous antics, the betrayal, her phony excuses, and Mark's very public downfall. Each revelation was met with gasps and laughter, and I could see the disgust on their faces as they realized how they had been duped. As the night wore on, I watched the tension build. I had effectively turned her friends against her, sowing seeds of doubt and betrayal among her closest allies. By the time the gathering ended, I felt triumphant, knowing that Emma's support system was beginning to crumble. The cherry on top came a few days later when I received a text from Alex. Jake, you'll want to see this. Mark's firm just declared bankruptcy, and they are considering legal action against him for the illegal practices you pointed out. It's falling apart. I couldn't help but smile. The pieces were all falling into place, and I reveled in the chaos I had orchestrated. Emma would soon realize that not only had she lost me, but she had also lost everything she had built her new life on. As the curtain fell on my revenge, I couldn't shake the feeling of satisfaction. This was just the beginning. Emma had betrayed me, and I had shown her the price of her actions. The thrill of victory coursed through me, and I was ready for whatever came next. The dust had settled, but the ripples of my revenge continued to reverberate through our once shared lives. Emma had become a ghost in her own narrative, haunted by her choices and the consequences that followed. As for me, I was left with a strange mixture of triumph and emptiness. A week after my gathering with Emma's friends, I was scrolling through social media when I came across the latest updates about the scandal surrounding Mark's firm. Headlines blared about the financial fallout, and public outrage fueled the fire. I couldn't help but smirk. This was my handiwork. I had become a silent orchestrator of chaos, relishing the unraveling of Emma's facade. But soon, I noticed something darker creeping into the corners of my mind. It started with an unexpected message from one of Emma's friends, Laura, who had been particularly vocal against me during our marriage. "Jake, we need to talk. I know things got crazy, but Emma is struggling. She didn't deserve this," her message read, laced with concern. Struggling? I thought, bitterly. She was the one who made the choice to betray me. But as I stared at the screen, a pang of guilt washed over me. "Do you really think she's suffering?" I typed back, my fingers hesitating before hitting send. "Yes. She's lost everything, her job, her friends, and now her reputation. I know what she did was wrong, but she's a human being, too. Maybe it's time to let this go," Laura replied. I put my phone down, feeling conflicted. Part of me wanted to bask in the glow of my victory, to relish in the reality that Emma's life had turned into a cautionary tale. Yet another part of me couldn't shake the thought that I might have gone too far. Emma had once been my partner, my confidant, and while the betrayal had cut deep, she was still a person with feelings and dreams. As I wrestled with these thoughts, I recalled the moments we had shared, the laughter, the late-night talks, the plans we had for our future. I decided it was time to confront Emma one last time, not out of a desire to rekindle anything, but to gain closure for both of us. I texted her, "Can we meet? I think we need to talk." To my surprise, she responded almost immediately. "Okay. Where?" I chose a small park near our old neighborhood, a place where we had once walked hand in hand. When I arrived, I spotted her sitting on a bench, looking lost and hollow, her usual confidence replaced with a look of despair. "Hey," I said, my voice softer than I intended. "Hey," she replied, avoiding my gaze. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history heavy between us. "Look, I didn't come here to rehash everything," I began, taking a deep breath. "I just wanted to see how you're doing." Emma looked up, surprise etched on her face. "You care?" I chuckled bitterly. "I guess I do, despite everything. It's just hard to see you like this. You made your choices, and I won't pretend they didn't hurt me, but I never wanted to see you lose everything." She looked down at her hands, a mix of shame and sorrow washing over her features. "I thought I was in love with Mark. I thought he could give me what I wanted, a life of excitement, a break from reality. I didn't realize how foolish I was until it all came crashing down. And now," I pressed gently, "now I'm facing the consequences of my actions. I've lost friends, my job, and I'm under constant scrutiny. It feels like I'm drowning, Jake. I never thought it would come to this." Her voice trembled as she spoke. "I'm not here to lecture you, Emma. You have to live with the choices you made. But know that I'm moving on. I'm finding my footing again," I admitted. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm really sorry for everything. I thought I could have it all without consequences, and I was wrong. If I could take it back, I would." I took a moment to process her words. The pain of betrayal was still fresh, but I could see a glimmer of remorse in her eyes. Perhaps she was genuinely regretful, and part of me wondered if that was enough for forgiveness. "Maybe you can start over," I suggested. "There's still time for you to rebuild your life. It won't be easy, but it's possible." Emma wiped her tears, her expression shifting from despair to determination. "I want to try. I want to be a better person, one who doesn't hurt others. I just don't know how." "You'll figure it out. We both will," I replied. As we sat in that park, surrounded by the echoes of our past, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I wasn't letting Emma back into my life, nor did I want to rekindle any old flame. But I could extend an olive branch, not for her sake, but for my own. As we parted ways, I glanced back at her one last time. Emma was still the woman I had loved, but she was also the woman who had betrayed me. I could finally accept that she was no longer a part of my life. In the following weeks, I continued to focus on myself. I found new hobbies, reconnected with old friends, and even took on a new job opportunity that had been waiting for me. The cloud of betrayal slowly lifted, leaving space for healing and growth. Meanwhile, news of Emma's downfall continued to spread, but I was no longer interested in watching her misery. I had learned that revenge was not as satisfying as I had imagined. What mattered was my own journey toward healing and the lessons learned from this experience. I began to look ahead, embracing the uncertainty of life with open arms. Perhaps someday, I would find love again, a love built on trust and honesty, free from the shadows of betrayal. For now, I was content knowing I had taken back my power and started anew. As for Emma, I hoped she would find her way, too. Perhaps one day, she would learn that true happiness doesn't come from fleeting thrills but from genuine connections built on trust, respect, and love.